Why should you obey the law? Ever since I was a child, I was kind of obsessed with this question. I'd walk into a shop and I'd think, why don't I just take the chocolate and run away? Um, but note that the question, why should you obey the law, is a deeper question than why do you obey the law? Many of us will cite to something like fear of punishment or self-interest or the fact that you just do it unconsciously or because others do. But it's a deeper question. It's a deeper normative question. I was so obsessed with this question that I ultimately studied law, I became a lawyer, and then I became a legal philosopher. And I started doing a PhD on this topic. And I really believed that I had the answer to this topic. But after 3.5 years of my PhD, I was told that the topic was too ambitious. And I actually dropped out of the PhD. I took great umbrage to this evaluation of my work and of this target, because really I believe that this is the most important and most urgent question that we're all faced with. Society, culture, and life itself are all shaped by law. Arguably, more than any other institution, law is what constitutes human institutions. Law bears on the most intimate aspects of our lives: birth, death, family, property, and freedom. And governments, constituted by law, are the single greatest threat to humanity, and they are constituted by law. But why is it such an important question, particularly here, for us in Prospera? It is important because if we are to create a new type of decentralized society, then the most important thing that we have to examine and change is the philosophical foundations that underpin it. What is the justification and the basis for our new political architecture? If we don't establish this, then we risk backsliding and just carrying over the old failed way of doing things, the failed modalities and the bureaucracy, the corruption, all of these things. So we have to examine and introspect to think how we're going to figure this out. This really requires that we critically examine the things that we most take for granted, right? The fact and the way that we behave in our daily lives, right? We have to examine why we behave that way and how we have been shaped by the status quo, and try to extirpate the assumptions that have shaped us as social beings. There are many failed explanations of why one should obey the law. The most popular one is the social contract, right, which goes back to Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. This idea that you must sign the social contract, and you have signed the social contract, and you did so to escape a life that was nasty, short, and brutish, the state of nature. But we have not signed a social contract. This is a fiction. And this is something that is peddled as if it explains the worst transgressions of Western nations against their people. Justice is another reason that's frequently cited. You should obey the law because it's just. Obviously, laws frequently are not just. Laws are frequently the vehicles for great injustice. Democratic mandate, another popular explanation and justification. Democratic mandate is mob rule by another name. Much of the constitutional infrastructure that we have was meant to protect the minority. And in reality, this explanation doesn't hold water either, right? We cannot opt out of the democratic system unless you come to somewhere like here, like Prospera. But you essentially have these options foisted upon you, such that you can elect your leaders, but you cannot select your leaders. And so none of these explanations fly. actual prevailing pathology, one that is baseless but is most frequently cited and most frequently manifests as the subconscious logic behind the way legal systems and everything downstream of them operates, is that you should obey the law because it is the law. This is obviously a circular justification. This is a circular explanation. It assumes the premises in the conclusion. What begs explanation here is, why does it matter that it is the law? What is it about the law that entails our commitment? One of the most famous instances where this was brought up was the Nuremberg tribunals, where the Nazi officers claimed that they were just doing what their legal system told them to. And the judges in the tribunal said that this is not an adequate justification, because the laws were so evil and so unjust that you should not have obeyed them. And yet, this is precisely the same legal positivist mindset that undergirds and drives the societies we live in today. It is what justifies, in the eyes of people like this, what they do, no matter how abhorrent. And to be clear, I'm not talking about the obviously tyrannical and inhumane regimes. I'm talking about Western regimes which hide behind the pomp and ceremony of the law, the mysticism of the law, and they use it to foist their transgressions upon us, to rob us of our rights, to rob us of our freedoms. Really what this is, fundamentally, is a species of informational arbitrage. This is a structural feature of centralized systems. Centralization creates bottlenecks. Bottlenecks sit between perception and truth, and every such position is exploited. The most obvious cliche example is politics, right? Everybody knows that politicians by nature are liars. It's a cliche to say this now, because they sit between reality and representation. They make promises that they know they're not going to keep, or not even capable of keeping. But the more fundamental instance of this is legal agents, who are the guardians of the architecture behind politics. And the way that they arbitrage information is through this circular self-justification. Obey the law because it is the law. But really, it's time to demystify law. Law is just a technology. It is a series of abstractions that are formulated in terms of a medium, natural language, originally written on papyrus and vellum, then paper, and then digitally. And it is this medium via which society coordinates, self-governs, and peremptorily settles conflict. What this means peremptorily is that it purports to substitute itself for the reasons that would otherwise apply to you. And so this is it. It's time to demystify law. This is what it is. The wigs and gowns are all just dress-up. And really, this is something that we should stop regarding as sacrosanct. So, after I dropped out of my PhD, which was honestly a very, very painful experience, I went to work in California as a lawyer. I passed the California bar, and this was around 2015, and I started working in a Silicon Valley law firm as an IP and privacy lawyer. It was right around the time that blockchain arose in earnest. It was during the ICO boom, when I had a lot of my clients were, some of the first wave of the Ethereum ICOs and such. And what occurred to me was that blockchains really were a new kind of medium through which we could self-govern. Blockchains, the most profound property for me is that they let each individual directly ascertain what is true. They disintermediate the non-local perspective so that anyone can tell what is the global state of things. And this is a decentralized solution to informational arbitrage. But the problem is that blockchains are still limited. Their expressivity is limited. They do not have the expressivity of natural language. Right now, really, what you verify on chain is account balances or opcodes when you're updating a smart contract. They're also limited, and this might be controversial, because the types of consensus that we have in our most favorite blockchains are still centralized. They still tend towards centralization and plutocracy. You must have a really powerful machine to have a fighter's punch chance of earning the block reward. You must have 32 ETH if you want to run an ETH node. All of these things are centralizing tendencies. And so the question is, what is the next evolution of blockchain, and can it provide us with a solution for this informational arbitrage? I would say yes. What we need is a self-verifying truth machine. Machine code is binary. It all reduces to 1 or 0, yes or no. That is Boolean logic, and it admits of a definitive answer regarding the state of the code and the contents of a machine at any given moment. The truth machine must be both operand and operator, which means that the data it operates on must be verified, but also that which is operating on the data must be verified intrinsically. It must not depend on anything exogenous or centralized actors. For it to be a truth machine, it has to generate truth from within itself, from the structure of the contents of the machine. And what this would enable is for us to create an axiomatized social order. That is a social order where we have the richness and the expressivity we need to govern a society, where we can form new political primitives through which we can self-govern, and really through which we can elect truth itself to be rendered. And what I will argue here is that this would admit of a new future where we could have a nation state, but one that does not depend on land. Nation states are not constituted by land. They are constituted by abstractions. These abstractions that we use in the legal system. The sign precedes the referent. The idea of the state, it refers to a geographic jurisdiction, but it is an idea first. And there are many other abstractions that we depend on and rely on in the legal system. These are ideas formulated in natural language: constitutional rights, legal duties, liabilities, sovereignty, etc. All formulated in natural language and all enforced through linguistic abstraction. What I would argue is that we now have what we need to build a cloud-first network state, one that is self-predicating, an ontological ground state that does not depend on land. It depends upon the axioms that constitute it. A self-verifying machine that has this kind of self-referential ability. So, surprise, I work for a company that I believe has the technology that is required to do this. I won't pitch it to you because I've already described the properties I think that are required for a cloud-first network state, what I call the network nation. It embodies. It has this self-verifying quality. It is not a plutocracy. It is not. It doesn't have these barriers to entry. But I believe that it has what it takes. And so with that, I'd invite you to join our Discord and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We have time for a very quick question and a very quick answer. What do you need most right now?
Well, funding, honestly.
Okay.
More funding.
You're also going to present tomorrow at the demo day?
Yeah, and we're there. We're launching mainnet in like the next 2 weeks. We have a bunch of interesting applications, DeSci applications, DeFi applications, building on us. You should come and run a node. You can run a node on your laptop or phone. You don't require any stake to do that, although there is a role for the token. But you can do it right now. We have 700 nodes all over the world running on our testnet.
Thank you, Brian.